some important positions. But slowly he got himself converted into Catholicism, for which he was attacked severely by many people, and especially Charles Kingsley, a well-known novelist of the time, who scathingly attacked this man for his religious beliefs. So in order to prove his stance and in order to substantiate his decision to convert himself into the Catholicism, a division of Christianity, he wrote this excellent book, a well celebrated book called Apologia Pro Vita Sua. So thinking that in mind, I took up this book because I didn't look at the back page. Okay, I simply thought that it would have been another book on theology and theological disputes, or something to do with the examination of Christian beliefs and faith. So naturally, I chose this book. However, as fate would have it, it remained with me for more than 8 years without me touching even. Okay, I have not even remembered that I bought this book. But when I had this opportunity in the form of reviewing, when Preethi ma'am asked me, why not you review a book? Then immediately I thought of this book. Somehow it came to my memory. I took up this book and read it, and I would like to share what I found in this interesting book. See, the book offers very interesting reading, and it was first published in Malayalam in 2009, and subsequently in the same year it was published in English also. And what is the main crux of this book is it is written by a nun, a Catholic nun called Sister Jesme. Sister Jesme. The very name Jesme is interesting because within the book she herself explained the name in few sentences. That is, her original name was Mini Raphael. That was her original name. But as soon as she joined the Carmel convent for nuns, she changed her name into Jesme, meaning Jesus and me. So that is the short form. By putting these two words together, Jesus and me, she started calling herself, she renamed herself as Jesme. Now, this book is divided into 5 chapters, okay, 5 chapters. And the very first thing that attracts your attention here in this book is it reads somewhat cinematically. The very first chapter, when the heroine, we should say the important character, the protagonist, she is traveling by train. And when she is traveling from Delhi to Ernakulam, she starts remembering what happened in her life. That is her, as the train moves forward, her memories go backwards, wheeling back. And she starts telling us what happened in her life that necessitates this particular journey at night. And she is alone in a compartment and wearing a chudidar, much against her usual dress, which is, you know, what the nun wears. It is called a habit. Okay, now she started wearing the chudidar, and what made her do so? So from that onwards, from that choice of dress, she started her story in this autobiography. But I would like to tell you one more thing regarding this autobiography, because she herself says in the preliminary chapter, okay, in the introduction, very introduction itself, she says that I don't think that it can be called an autobiography, because in autobiography you would find names which are real. You find people which are real, and their interaction with the character would usually be presented in an attractive manner. But here you will find all the names are fictionalized. Okay, the author Jesme, she did not want to openly mention the real names of all the all the characters that came across her life during her period in the convent. And interestingly, that was a very long period, nearly 33 years. Okay, born into a family of nearly 6 children in Kerala, and she being the 4th child, she was like all other children in the beginning of her life. Okay, she was playing, she was interested in music, and she used to go to almost all movies of Premjith, and she also saw all the English movies that were screened during her days. So she was like all other children of her days. But somehow she started leaning towards the spirituality due to one of the teachers whom she mentioned by name. But we do not know whether that name is also the real name of the person or just a name given to that particular character. Because the author, at the very beginning, she says that she doesn't want to mention the names of the characters. So we still do not know whether the characters are real or whether the characters are imaginary. But she herself says, the author says that all the characters' names are in fact fictitious. Nevertheless, she says that the events she has described in the books happened. They were in fact real. They were real. So this is how she got into that spiritual side due to the influence of one of her teachers in the class when she was in 8th standard. She was influenced to a large extent by biblical studies and biblical stories that could be told by a particular teacher in the class. And slowly, without her being aware of it, she started thinking about joining a nunnery. Okay, she started thinking about that, but she kept that particular intention as a secret, because she herself says in the novel that in that autobiography that her family was not known for such actions, because they believed in Kerala that becoming a nun is actually specific, that is something that could happen only in fewer families. That is, you must be a chosen family in order to give your family member to a convent so that they could become a father, a priest, or a nun. But nevertheless, as she was so much interested, as well as she had that determination that time to become a nun, she joined nunnery with the blessings of all her family members. At the beginning, everyone was against that, but nevertheless, when they saw the determination on the part of this girl, they allowed her to do so. And from there, her real journey within the confined walls of nunnery started. So there also started all her problems. See, all along he had been a child who was under the care of her caring parents, okay, the loving parents, and she did not know much about what was happening inside the 4 walls of a convent. Okay? But she was ready to face. During this autobiography, she herself says that whatever may happen to her, because she heard certain things bad about the convents, the things that usually or regularly that took place inside the convents during those days. But nevertheless, as her belief in Christ was great, she thought that everything would disappear. So she put her entire faith in Christ. So with that intention, she continued to be a part of that nunnery. And here I would like to point out one thing. So I told you in the beginning that this entire autobiography was divided into 5 chapters, that is by the author. But for me, the important areas which she discussed in this particular autobiography are the following. I would not like to miss out anything. So I kept them written on a piece of paper. Let me read it out. What are the different areas which she concentrated in the course of her autobiography? That is, first of all, she starts talking about suppression of freedom of speech. Okay, that is the first thing. As soon as she joins the nunnery, the first casualty in her life is the suppression of the freedom of speech, because at home she used to give expression to whatever she felt. But as soon as she joined there in the convent, she was not allowed to talk her mind. So the first thing was suppression of the freedom of speech. Then you have power politics among the nuns. See, that is the next thing. See, that these things you usually don't expect in a nun, okay, in a nunnery, because that is always looked upon as a place of God, okay, that has religious significance as well as spiritual significance. So usually no one would like to look down upon those things. Instead, everyone would look up to them for message, for their life, okay, for their advice on life. But here she says that there are different groups within the nunnery, okay. Each one has their own group, and sometimes it may be 2, sometimes it may be 3 or 4, or things like that. So naturally, as soon as a person joins the particular convent, all the groups would be waiting for the opportunity to know to which group that new recruit belongs to. They only based upon that their next action would take place. So that was the thing she mentions. And another thing is exploitation and corruption. See, exploitation and corruption in the sense, exploitation of whom? That is a question she tries to answer. That is exploitation of the poor. Because even within that convent, all nuns are not considered as equals. We must remember that fact. All nuns are not considered equals because nuns come from different backgrounds, okay? The recruits, okay, those who want to become nuns, they come from different backgrounds, from different familial, what should I say? The familial background, in fact, okay? They come from different background. That is, some of them may be very educated, then social background may be different, or in terms of money, some of them are poor, some of them are very rich. So based upon whether a person is poor or rich, whether a person is educated or uneducated, or even whether a person comes from the lower community, that is the lower strata of the society, or from the higher strata of the society, only after looking at all these things, people would react to your suggestion, or they try to be friendly with you. So everything depends upon these distinctions. Usually, you cannot imagine, usually we do not imagine that such things would take place inside a convent that is meant for people who study spirituality and who are there to serve the society and to make the society better. But unfortunately, exploitation took place by following social distinction. Then another problem is the schools run by all these people, okay, the different convents, schools, colleges, these are run by such Christian convents. And there also you could find one interesting thing, that is corruption. The corruption in the sense, the mismanagement of funds on the one side, and another side is to getting donation for the seats. See, every college, every school started by all these Christian convents or different denominations of Christian faith. Their main purpose was to uplift education, to cater education to the needy and the poor. But unfortunately, the reality is different. That is what we come to know from her inside story, because she tells in so many pages. Actually, she gives a very detailed account of how the money received from government is mismanaged, as well as how students are forced to pay a lot of money. They are asked to cough up a lot of money in the name of donation, in the name of breakage charges, things like that. And she also points out the corruption that takes place especially during the time of admission. So all these things she points out with certain graphic details in this book. Then the most striking and the shocking thing about what happens within these four walls is the prevalence of lesbianism. The prevalence of lesbianism, because she herself becomes a victim of one such attempt, and she devotes nearly 3 to 4 pages for this type of assault, physical assault made on her by one of her senior nuns. See, if you look at everything, you would understand one thing. See, religion, as long as it remains a faith, there won't be any problem. But the moment it gets institutionalized, the moment you have hierarchy within among people who are supposed to lead you, who are supposed to teach you the faith, then you will get into problem. Because with hierarchy comes the love for power. So power usually corrupts people, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we have heard that. So this is what happens in that case. And lesbianism is only an expression of power more than expression of a physical desire. Okay, and she was made victim to that. First of all, unknowingly, but after some time, when she realized that her very existence was in question, she herself offered her body to that other nun. So she mentioned that, and we must be happy that a nun who could talk openly about all these ills, even at the expense of losing her own name, losing her own character, because it takes a lot of courage to express these things to others. Okay, because your name is involved. People may even look down upon you. So you may be telling the truth, but the truth is bitter to so many people. So many people who try to associate you with that particular thing. But nevertheless, we must definitely appreciate this writer for coming out with such bold and somewhat interesting things. More than interesting, we should not use the word interest, because in fact we should feel sorry that such things take place inside such highly respectable institutions. So it is a time for us actually to feel sorry. I should not have used the word interesting, but nevertheless it was a bold attempt. It was a bold attempt by this particular writer. Then you have illegal relationships that take place among priests and nuns. See, that is another part. See, the part of flesh.
Another 3 minutes.
Yeah. Just let me finish it.
Yeah.
Then you have that influence of politics. Politics also plays a vital role here. See, when they have problem inside the convent, instead of trying to arrive at a conclusion by discussing among themselves, sometimes they go outside and they try to contact political parties in order to settle some of the problems in their institutions run by them. And one more thing is the very pitiable state of the old nuns and old priests and nuns who are no longer active. How are they looked after? See, that is very pitiable. So that condition was also brought about. That would definitely make you cry, because such a pitiable condition they are in. So that was also given by her. And I would like to find, and I would like to ask her certain questions. That is, as soon as I completely read the book, these things came up in my mind, because throughout this book, one after other, she talks only about the problems she faced and different types of bad things that take place within that convent. But as a nun, only in one or two places, she talks about the theological aspect of her life or the spiritual aspect of her life. But in one place, she questions St. Paul, because she finds fault with the teaching of St. Paul, who says that a woman should always take a secondary position in life, because she raises that particular point when she talks about the inequality of treatment that exists between priests and nuns. Okay, priests are allowed to go wherever they like. They are allowed to go without that religious dress by just wearing pants and anything they like. They are allowed to stay outside during night. Whereas in the case of women, the nuns, they are not allowed to do so. So overall, I would like to call this not as an autobiography. The best thing would be from timidity to temerity. Okay, she was earlier very shy, as long as she was in the family or in the beginning of her convent years. But as she grows up, she starts questioning everyone. Okay, how unreasonable it may be, we do not know. The problem is, he should have, from my understanding, she should have mentioned the names of all the people involved in such heinous crime against humanity. Otherwise, how could you save the future? How could you save the future recruits who may join the same place, who may undergo the same suffering and pain? However, it offers a very breezy and a very interesting reading, and those who likes to know the bitter truth definitely can read this book. So don't take this as an attack on a particular religion. Such things could happen in any religious institution. Anything is possible. Here is only a case in point. That's all. So I hope that I have done some justice to it. I have a lot to say due to the time constraint. Already I have been reminded by Preethi ma'am, and now I think that I have done justice to my review, and I hope that all of you are able to follow some of the things I have said. And if you have any questions, I am ready to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramakrishnan sir. You summed it up beautifully, that her journey has been from timidity to temerity. And yes, a very balanced perspective about institutionalized religion, talking about lifting the veil and also the soul searching that needs to be done. I invite the participants to ask questions. And Ramakrishnan sir, we didn't mean to cut short your time. We thought you'll have more to say when people pose questions to you.
Yeah, definitely. Even if it is in the form of chat, that would also be better if you are able to.
Sir, I have a question to you, sir.
Yeah, definitely, sir.
This is Professor Subbu from Madurai.
Okay.
In a simple language, you beautifully have presented the autobiography by this nun.
Okay.
But does it have any significance where, when you were pointing out, pointing out the issues one by one, 1, 2, 3, something that you have pointed out some. Presented some points where you have used one word which is very powerful, or does it have any significance? The word which you have used, casualty.
Yeah.
Why did you use that word casualty? Is there any, does it carry any significance?
Yeah, the word casualty means, it's a kind of war. See, war with life. You can take in that way. See, people, when they face reality for the first time, sometimes they start losing whatever they have held dear to them over the years. So that is why I use the word casualty. Casualty here means, they say in war, the first casualty is truth, because the opposite party would give how many people actually were killed, and the other party to the war would say that they had killed so many people. So the first casualty would be truth. So the same thing here. The first casualty for anyone. See, the question is, actually I would like to answer this with what she said in the book. That is, as soon as you start being a nun or a priest, you have to take 3 types of oaths. Okay, oath of allegiance, then oath of poverty, and oath of obedience. See, under that oath of obedience, all other things would come under that umbrella. Okay, the moment you take that oath of obedience. That's all. The thing is, you need to remember the obedience here actually really meant to be obedient to the God. But unfortunately, in an institutionalized situation, okay, here the obedience means obedience not to God, obedience to your superiors.
Superiors.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever the superior said, you need to follow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
Any other question? We can take one more. While we wait for a question, I'd just like to point out some point of convergence with the Bama's Karukku. I think many of us have acquainted with the text because it came out in the 90s. So there also is a story of a nun who left the convent. And of course, literature abounds with stories right from the Reformation, Martin Luther leaving the institutionalized religion. Is there anyone else who has a question?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'm Shruti and I'm a literature student, sir. Very crisp and very nice review about the book, sir.
Thank you.
I had a question, sir.
Go
so
ahead.
if religion is an institution of faith, when it is mixed with politics, do you think the faith shudders?
Can you repeat that question? The second part I am not able to follow.
The religion is an institution of faith.
Okay.
When religion is mixed with politics, do you think faith shudders?
Do you think?
Faith shudders, or the faith is disturbed or destroyed,
Yeah,
or is it affected?
Yeah, naturally, because as long as people remain individuals, okay, when there is no one between you and the God you pray to, no such problem would crop up. The moment when someone comes and tells you that this is how you have to pray and this is how you are expected to behave. So see, throughout this book, if you read, see, she is a good Christian, okay? She is a good human being. She wants to help the poor people. She wants to help the poor students by making them, okay, opportunities for them to study in the particular convent where she works as first she worked as a vice principal in one college as well as a principal in another college. So on both the places, she has tried her very best to accommodate the poor students in the name of God, okay? That is out of love and kindness. But in the case of the institution, when you look that activity of that this nun from the point of view of the management, then in fact she has brought them problems because they believed, okay, as an institution they believed that they had the right to give admission to anyone they like, whether by asking them to pay money or whether by getting some type of recommendation from people outside with whom they may get something in future, by whom they could do something, they can get something done. So that is the thing. So definitely, as long as faith remains individualistic, no problem at all. The moment it gets institutionalized, when your faith is being regulated, that is the word they use, okay? When the other person starts regulating your faith and tries to impose certain things which you know are bad and which you know are not to be followed. But anyhow, since you have taken the oath of so-called obedience, you cannot escape that. You cannot escape doing that. You are forced to do what you do not like. That is the worst thing that could happen to a person.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for asking that question, and thank you, Subbu sir, also. So I'd like to wrap up Ramakrishnan sir's bold, brave, and thought-provoking presentation with a few thoughts that could especially keep the younger generation thinking. There are a lot of parallels between politics and religion because both are based on ideology. And when there is ideology, something very hard to live up to, ideology and ideals, hypocrisy tends to set in. So that's why we have the truth seekers who become whistleblowers and things like, and that's what happens. So I'll leave you with that thought and move to our next speaker for today. I now invite Dr. Fathima, Head of the Department of English, SIT College, also known as Justice Bashir Ahmad Said College. And she has an interesting book. She's presenting Good Days by Benyamin. Welcome, madam. The floor is yours. Madam, you have to unmute. You have to unmute, madam.
Is it done? Yeah. Good evening to all of you, to all the professors, the research scholars, and the students on this platform. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Rufus and Dr. Maria Preethi for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And the book that I'm presenting today is called Good Days by Benyamin. This is the book. And this book received the Kerala Sahitya Academy Award in the year 2009. And it has been a highly acclaimed book, appearing in the long list of Man Asian Literary Prize and in the short list of the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature in the year 2013. And what
Madam, sorry to interrupt you. Will you please keep your mic close to your mouth, madam? Mic, collar mic. Yeah, close to your mouth. It is disturbed. Yes, ma'am. So your voice is breaking. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a book which has been highly acclaimed and which won the Kerala Sahitya Academy Award in the year 2009. And this book, I was attracted to this book with the title because I have heard of books. I have heard of words like Red Letter Day and Black Day and Good Day and Bad Day, but not Good Day, Good Days. Okay, so because the title was Good Days, I thought I should read, and and there was something that attracted me to this book. And I realized that this book is the story of an Indian immigrant to Saudi Arabia. And his story is like the American dream, where people migrated from India to go to the Gulf countries, hoping for better prospects, upward social mobility. And as the very protagonist of the novel, Najib Mohammed says, he speaks of his own villages, having come back from Saudi Arabia with gold chains, with the VCPs, with television sets. And he also dreams of making it big there. And then, the protagonist is Najib Mohammed. And we are told that Benyamin, the writer, has based this novel on a true life story of this protagonist, Najib Mohammed. And the book is divided into 4 chapters. The first chapter is titled The Prison. The next chapter is The Desert. Then you have The Escape. And the last chapter is Refuge. So the first chapter that talks about the prison is where we have the protagonist along with another friend. They are hiding away and in the prison, hoping to be away from the very stark eyes of the Arab who would come in search of them. So these 2 friends are there in the prison, and that is how the book opens. And then, of course, there is a flashback where the narrator, the protagonist, Najib Mohammed, goes back to recount his horrifying tale of how he landed at the Riyadh airport, having been sent by his wife, Saino, who is the only female character in the novel. Like, we don't meet her, but she's there as a shadow, encouraging him, and he says she is his secret pride. And because she was expecting, and he wanted to make, give his family a better, more comfortable life, and that is how he encouraged by his wife's words, who is always very positive. He sets off on this journey along with a friend, a person who lives in his own village called Hakim. So here Najib Mohammed was a sand miner in his village, and he was lured to Saudi Arabia with the promise that he would be working in a construction company. So this story set sometime in the year 90s to 95, where he had to shell out about 30,000 rupees. And he says even to shell out that amount, says he had to mortgage his house and he had to sell his wife's jewels and borrow from all the other sand miners. And he really worked hard and he had to borrow a lot of money in order to amass that little amount, 30,000 rupees for his visa. And finally, he reaches Bombay, and that journey was uneventful. And then the flight to Riyadh, where he and his friend Hakim land there at the Riyadh International Airport. And he says it was like a wonderland for them, with the high-rise buildings and the lights and all the hustle bustle of the airport. And he also remarks and says that all the Arabs and the women and the men from different nations who were thronging that airport looked like white and black penguins. That is the description given by Benyamin. And they await their master or the person who had sponsored them. And having waited for more than an hour, they find that all the other co-passengers had left and they were still standing on the portico waiting for someone to come and pick them up. And finally, a very rusty and a dusty pickup van or a vehicle comes, and an Arab steps out of it, and he comes and looks at their passports and beckons them to get into his vehicle. So that is how the journey of Najib Muhammad begins, a horrendous journey. And they travel through the night and they are taken to a remote area in the desert. And to his horror, he realizes that both he and Hakim were separated, and his friend Hakim was left at one place, and then he was asked to continue his journey and left in another place where he could only smell some stench and he could not make out. He was wondering that it could be an office or a construction site, but there was a lot of stench. He couldn't make out at first what it was, but when dawn came, he realized that he was in an enclosure for goats and that his fate was sealed forever. That here was an Arab who had brought him to look after his goats and the camels, and he realized that it was destiny that had brought him. Initially, he was very upset. He starts weeping and howling, but language was a barrier and there was nobody to help him except for his master, the Arab, and another figure who he refers to as a scary person, a scary figure. This scary figure looks like he had been there already for many years, and of course, even he spoke only Hindi, and Najib could speak only Malayalam. This novel was originally written in Malayalam and later translated by a professor of English, Joseph Koyippally. So here Najib says Hindi also was alien to him. He couldn't understand the scary person's language, and so he stays there and he learns what his job is, which was from sunup to sundown. He was made to work, feed the sheep and the goat there, the goats and the sheep and the camel there, and fetch water, and then take them out. And he believed that they were going to some meadow, but finally he realizes that in a desert there are no meadows, no green lands, but only boulders and very tough soil, very hard soil and boulders, and that becomes his lifestyle. So he's stripped of his clothes and he's given the Arab abaya that he has to wear, a long gown-like thing which comes up to his knees, and then he's also denied water to have a bath, and he very fondly recollects the days when he used to jump into the river in his own native town every morning, and he misses that, and he realizes how precious water is, and that they had to fetch it by trucks and lorries to feed the goats and the camels and to quench their thirst. And as a human being, he was totally dehumanized because he couldn't even use water to wash himself or even for his daily.
Madam, can you just check your connections, ma'am? Hold your mic closer, and maybe your wireless, your wire goes into your device. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Check that it's well set.
Now is it better?
Better.
Now is it better?
Yeah,
okay.
Hold it closer, ma'am.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. So he recounts the hardships and the arduous trials, which dehumanized him completely, and where he had to be in that enclosure for goats and camels and take care of them throughout the day. And his job in the morning was to feed the goats and the camels, and then through the day he had to take them out to the desert where there was hard soil and boulders, just as a means of exercise, because there was no grassy patch or meadows or an oasis anywhere nearby. So he had to just take them out for an exercise and then be back with them. So that is how his days passed. And then after a few months, he realizes that the other person, the scary person whom he refers to as a scary person, disappears, and he is left alone to do all these odd jobs. And he thinks that it is his destiny, and from resistance, he slowly comes to accept his fate. So that is how he accepts his fate. He goes on with his life, and he says the only thing that kept him going was the thoughts of his family, his wife, and the child who he was expecting in the family, since his wife was pregnant when he left. And he also says that he lived by talking to the goats and giving them nicknames of all the people who lived in his village. He used to observe the goats and then give them nicknames depending on their traits, and that there is some kind of humor there when he speaks of the different names that he had given the goats, and how he tries to entertain himself and keep up his spirits, and he tries to stay sane from the insanity that is there around him. So that is how his life goes on, and he could not even make any move to escape to freedom, because one day he does try, and he realizes that the Arab was there with a jeep and a gun, a double-barrel gun, and he escapes with his life, as a goat actually saves his life, which comes in between him and the bullet, and the goat sacrifices its life for him, and he realizes that it served no purpose to escape from there, and if he ever escaped, it would only be to his death. Okay, so he decides that he will remain there and accept whatever his fate is, but he had great faith and believed that someday there would be a miracle, and that the Almighty will shower his blessings on him, and that he will be able to escape from that horrifying condition in which he found himself. And there is also a lot of pathos in another chapter in the novel, where he writes a letter to his wife, and he imagines what the kind of life that he actually wished for, and he starts writing to his wife saying that he was at a construction company with all the luxury. So that gives rise to a lot of pathos, but of course his letter wouldn't go anywhere, he couldn't post it, so he just keeps it with himself. And then suddenly, after a few years, he remembers the person who had come along with him from his village, and remembers that he ought to be somewhere in the neighborhood, as they had brought him on their way to his enclosure. So one night it starts raining after a long period, and he realizes that this rain was a blessing from the Almighty, and his pranks, where he goes out, rushes into the rain, and tries to enjoy the water falling on his body, is something again which is very poignant. So he goes in search of his friend and neighbor, and he's lucky because he is able to reach the next enclosure, which was a few kilometers away, and he calls out to his friend Hakim, and he realizes that this man, his friend, had also changed drastically. He had become very thin and gaunt, and he could not recognize him, as he had grown a long beard, and his hair was matted, and his clothes were dusty. So they were made to live in such inhumanitarian conditions, and he could not even recognize him, but he is able to speak to him and console him and tell him that he is close by, and that they could plan something, and plan a means of escape. So he's, at least that gives him some hope and joy that he has a friend in the neighborhood. And after a couple of months again, this friend of his is able to reach out to him and sends a note to him saying that there was a Somalian worker who had come called Ibrahim, and this Somalian worker knew all the routes and was willing to help them to escape. So they all wait and abide their time and wait for a time when they could escape. And finally, the day dawns, and they realize that their masters, the Arabs, had to attend a wedding, and they had given them the responsibility of taking care of the enclosures for a couple of days. And that night, they planned their escape, and the way in which he bids goodbye to the cattle and to the goats and the camels is again very touching, because they were his only friends, his sole companions during his stay of about 3.5 years. And so he bids them a goodbye very poignantly, and then he escapes into the night with the other two. So these three men start running. They don't even walk. The moment they step out of the enclosure, they start running. They're out into the, in the vast desert, and it is night, and they don't even know where they were going. But the Somalians seem to know at least a few routes, so he leads them, and that is how they start their arduous journey across the barren desert. And on their journey, there are many passages in the book which talk about the beauties of the desert. We might think that the desert is a place which is lifeless, but then they talk about living creatures in the desert. Of course, there is a very awe-inspiring incident of about 100 snakes which travel as a battalion, and these three are made to lie down with their faces in the sand and have this battalion of snakes crawling over them, and that is how they save their lives. So they escape by the whisk of a hair, where they are able to lie down in the sand, and that is how they escape a snake bite. And then he also talks of the lizards and the chameleons which can live without water, and the plants and the flowers. And he says, you could never imagine that a desert could be a home to all these living creatures. And he says only when a man has an opportunity does he look around and watch or observe nature and realize what nature has to give us. And by observing nature, he also realizes that nature, it has its own way of teaching man lessons. And he also feels that, like all these plants which lay dormant in the scorching sun and the heat of the desert, how they come to life when there is a little rain. And he says his life also is something like that, where he needs to keep up his spirits and not give up, but endure and struggle and be undefeated and get on with his life and find some way of escape. So that is how they pass through the desert. And then we realize that on the way, his friend Hakim, who is a weakling, he couldn't keep up, and it was sheer exhaustion and thirst, that makes him very tired and drowsy, and finally, he passes away. So these two men, Ibrahim and Najib, feel very sad, but they know that they cannot do anything, and so they leave their friend behind and his body to be covered by the sand dunes and the sandstorms, and both of them keep trudging along. And as they trudge along, suddenly the next morning, they have been traveling in the desert for about three nights and 3 days, and his friend Ibrahim, the Somalian, shouts with joy when he sees a lizard, and that was the first sign, he says, of water in the vicinity, because a lizard is generally found where there is water in the vicinity. So they start walking towards and looking for the lizards, and more lizards, and finally they are taken to an oasis where they find a pool of water with hidden among the shrubs, and there they go and quench their thirst. And again, they start looking for a route, and they find a path in the desert with wheels, and he's very happy. Ibrahim and Najib are very happy because at last they feel that they have found a place, a path where there are vehicle wheels, and which might lead them to some kind of a highway where they can find a vehicle or some conveyance to take them to the city and to some kind of an escape. So they start walking on that path, but very sadly soon there is a sandstorm, and the pathway which is made with the wheels is all covered with sand, and it is lost. So again, once again, they are lost in the wide expanse of the desert, with the star-studded sky above them, looking for a path to take them to the highway. And the next morning, they spend the night like that. And the next morning, when he wakes up, Najib finds that his friend, the Somalian, had disappeared. So he is again, full of despair because he didn't know where he was, and he couldn't. There was no means of finding his friend too. And finally, he trudges along all by himself with faith in his heart and hope that the Almighty will work some miracle. And he reaches a highway, and he's so relieved to find a lot of vehicles going down on the highway. And then he tries to wave out to a few vehicles, but there's none of them stop by and pick him up. But finally, a luxurious car comes by, and he tries his hand at that, and he says there was a young Arab in it who opens the door for him, never questions him, never asks him anything, but lets him in and also offers him some water when he sees his condition. So he says that was again some water which revived him, which put up his spirits. And this Arab who had given him a lift in the car drops him off at a city in Riyadh, in the city of Riyadh. And he once he's out of the car, again he's all by himself, all alone, and he was overcome with exhaustion, with tiredness, and also maybe relief that he had reached the city and that Arab was not pursuing him. So finally, he reaches a place and he's not even aware of whether it is a house or what, and he just, collapses on the steps of that place. And, he comes back and regains his consciousness only after 3 days to realize that he was saved by a Malayali hotel owner, who takes him in.
Another 2 minutes, madam.
Yes, I'll wrap it up. Who takes him in, looks after him, and and he nurses him back to his health, and also gives him a new set of clothes and makes him a new person, a human being. He had almost been reduced to the level of a beast, and so now he gets back his human form. And from then on, he realizes that he has to get back home, and the only way to do that was to go and hand himself over to the police so that the embassy people will find him and take him back home. So he goes to the prison, he meets another person at the prison. So both of them, again, the story comes back full circle. It began with the prison and it ends in a prison. And again, there he goes through a very chilling kind of a scene, and a scene where the Arabs come and all the prisoners are kept in a line. The Arabs come and they look and they search for their person, the laborer who had absconded, and they are again taken back. So here is Najib also standing and shivering in his place, waiting for his turn every day, hoping that he would be saved somehow. And I will not tell you how the story ends. I leave that to you to read the book and to find out. But this book, actually what I learned from this book is the true spirit of human endurance. Okay, and it reminded me of Hemingway's Santiago and The Old Man and the Sea, where Santiago says a man may be destroyed but not defeated. So I feel that this book, more than a horrifying story of an immigrant, the sad story which is not normally told or narrated, it is a celebration of the human spirit and the endurance which a person can have, the human spirit and its endurance. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, for that brilliant presentation. We were literally straining to listen to you.
I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry.
Because of the audience. But to me, it was intelligible. Maybe because I'm familiar with the story, I'm not sure. You probably just check the audio inset. And maybe when you take the answers, we might come across clearer.
Okay, I'll do that. Audio. Is it clear now? Because this was the same audio that I used yesterday. Is it clear now? Is it clear? Dr. Preethi, is it clear? Hello.
Stroke of summing up where you said a man may be destroyed, defeated, and the way you wonderfully connected this story of human trafficking, well, this human trafficking and the trauma of this story. Question waiting. So on to the over to the person who has the question.
Yeah. Yes. Shoot off.
I did hear someone. Someone has a question.
I can't hear the question. I'm sorry, Dr. Preethi. I couldn't hear the question.
Ma'am, that was
Yes.
very nice of you to keep this there for us to know what happens at the end.
Yeah.
Don't you think that he shows tremendous faith in all this?
Yes. Yes, he does. It was his faith actually, which kept him going more than anything. It was his faith more than anything that kept him going. And he passes from the different phases of faith. First, of course, there is resistance, where he questions God's purpose, God's motives, and then, he accepts his destiny. And then, of course, he understands that, he has to wait patiently. Like Milton says, they also serve who only stand and wait.
Yes. You can type your questions, friends. Adam can see it on the screen and answer them.
Shall I switch off my video? Maybe that is interfering with the audio. Shall I do that?
Yeah,
Dr.
waiting
Preethi?
for redemption. No, that's.
Yeah, maybe I'll try that. Okay. I think with the video on, the audio was not very clear, I think. Sometimes. Hello? Are there any questions, Dr. Preethi? I'm not able to hear.
I'm just waiting for the others to come in.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker. If you have questions for Fathima, ma'am, you can come in later. Our next speaker is Dr. Sumathi, lecturer in DMI of St. Eugene University, Zambia. And she's picked up a very interesting book titled Township Girls, The Crossover. I don't want to give away too much information about the book, that it has a lot to do with the one who's presenting the book, and she's chosen a very apt book and an apt theme. Welcome, Sumathi, madam. Over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope I'm audible. Can you catch me? Preethi ma'am, can you get me online?
Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Is it fine? Yeah. I feel elated.
I cannot hear you. I hope the others can.
Why, even yesterday you did say that you didn't hear me. Can you hear me now? Any comments from others? Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Clear, ma'am.
Audible.
Okay, that's fine. Let me continue.
Audible, ma'am. Carry on.
I feel sad that Preethi ma'am says she cannot hear me. But anyway, I feel elated to be here this evening and amidst the learned scholars of the day. And it was, I should appreciate the previous two speakers who took us spellbound by their narration and the narrative of the full story in toto. And as for the sequence of me coming into this reader's rendezvous and be a part of this books and cafe, what I felt was, I did read a lot of books across, and then finally I settled with one with where I am working, and I thought that would be fine to talk about. For a beginner to say, reading of all good books is nevertheless is like a conversation with the finest people of the past. This is not my quote, it is a quote by Descartes, and a famous philosopher, I should say, on literary terms. And this particular book that I have taken is of the present. And pretty fine, this book is passionately written by a lot of women. Specifically for men, I have got a lot of reverence and adoration for what a man is. But for a woman, in a growing up country, a country that needs a lot of women to empower themselves, as in Africa, I did feel this book was something very interesting. And pretty fine, when I landed Africa in 2013-14, it was such a cultural shock for me, which I always would say with my best friends that I have in India. And I felt like coming back in the same flight. I didn't like anything of the land. It was so dry, it was barren, and there was no greenery around. Things were like that. And it was so silent to step down and get into the particular cab to go to our place of work. But then on reaching, maybe I started to read lots, because the particular place, the college, the organization, university had a lot of books. And out of which some of the books that I took for a liking, which reflected passionately on the kind of the people of the country. And the book that I have taken is Township Girls. And this is again a cluster of about 30 plus women who are writing textual content of their experiences from the age-old past, maybe from the 1959 pre-colonial period until 1980, and the break-off of the particular, what do we say, federation, I should say Rhodesia, which is no more now, which has broken up into smaller countries of 3 major units. And those 3 countries are still there with separate names, okay, to be very frank. And these are encounters of memories, I should say, memories of the past. And those people who have written that now would have been in their childhood. So it was like a fantasy life for them, whether of unforgettable experiences, happenings, episodes, joys, fears, triumphs, ecstasies of adventures that they would have come across during the pre-colonial times, of childhood imagination that they dwell upon in deriving this story. So it is like a woven, intricate assortment of different clusters being put in of personal experiences of the pre-colonial period, and leading on, now they are women in profession, and that is the post-colonial period, and that is of the independent Rhodesia, I should say. Okay, so this particular book is a passionate outburst of reality of life as experienced in childhood, and of that particular part of Africa which was called Rhodesia, which is no more now. Rhodesia broke up after maybe by 1969 it broke up, though certain countries became free, but the broken lands became free, but one particular land, the Zimbabwe, remained under the British rule until 1980. So then the other part was what we call as the Zambia and the Nyasa land. Okay, Rhodesia can be broken as Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasa land. Okay, these 3 comprised of the big chunk of the geographical piece of Rhodesia. Now, the Southern Rhodesia is Zimbabwe, then Northern Rhodesia is Zambia, and Nyasa land is that riftland region of the Lake Nyasa, Malawi. Okay, and on to the southern part, a bit of Mozambique also comes into the forum. You know why? Because Mozambique is part and parcel of a very parallel and a narrow strip of a land. So then you need to understand this Township Girls is not about one particular clan and a group of people or a tribal community. It is a cluster, I should say. So then there has been a lot of generational changes coming up, and intricacies to thought process of people having lived over there, and precise to be said, it is like a crossover generation. What do you mean by crossover? A crossover is something that crosses over. In biological terms, we say crossover of chromosomes to have the genetic material transformed from a parent gene, from a mother chromosome to the father chromosome, and that's how the child takes the traits of both the parents. It is hereditary. So same here in crossover of this generation, crossover generation stories, I should say. The women who shared their crossover experiences. Some have moved away from the particular big land of Rhodesia. Maybe they have from Zambia, they have gone down to Zimbabwe. For Zimbabwe, they would have gone over to South Africa, or some would have moved down to Mozambique or to Malawi. You know, this crossing over is very simple. And this crossing also tells about the period of time and space as required over a decade. Period of time, a childhood memory at 10 or 9, over a period of time at 59, how it would have been. 55 decades moved across with 50 years of changes coming in, and how they have gone into a growing up of people with the growing up of culture and tradition, and that is the main impact. So the three countries, three different traditional impact, and each of them are meticulously interwoven like the skull of our brain, I should say. This time, township girls as such is all by women. Maybe it is inspiring to come up with men also. Township boys is coming up lately, but then this is available. This book is available in Amazon. It is a clusters put in together and woven, and it took a long time for the author to get to have it to do it over a period of time, because culturally they had to intricate it into a rhythm and a pattern. And so then the author by herself is again a compiler. They have been compiling a big, what do we say, assortment of these stories together in a very fine form, along with two other friends, Nomsa Mwamuka and Wadzanai Gazwe, and then we have even, what do we say, Farai. So these three women joined in to have 30+ women to have the stories written. Okay, so they are transitioning of the black rule. They have taken up black rule. It means to say pre-colonial period was completely of the white. The black were made to live in white. If I would talk about Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi, dear friends, traveling is not that very, very difficult. You can just travel. If the place where I work is the capital city, Lusaka, from there, if I would go to Livingstone in 5.5 to 6 hours by a cab, there is a very big, beautiful waterfall. Okay, a Livingstone waterfall. It's called Mosi Tutunia. That is the thunderous water flow in their language. And this Moses Tunya, what happens is, if I would take a bridge across, it has got a crossover bridge. It has got a crossover bridge. And there is a railway line going over the crossover bridge. And it's such a thunderous force of water flowing next to Niagara. It's the tallest one in the world. It's one of the 7 wonders. It's such a beautiful experience to be there. Like we feel the presence of God there. So then, you know, when you cross over, you're getting straight into Harare. What is Harare? The capital of Zimbabwe, which was previously called Salisbury before in the pre-colonial period. And as you get to the bridge and cross, just 5 to 10 minutes, but to go to the bridge, you have to go across the whole length of the waterfall, and then get to an iron platform, walking across that, and then go to the bridge at station, where you have even, what do we say, so many adventure games being played over there. And then you walk over the bridge, and my dear friends, you are getting into another territory. That is another country, Zimbabwe. And they are all part before called Rhodesia. And there will be a big, huge wall, a big, what do we say, podium to say, this was Rhodesia before it was the southern Rhodesia. You are moving in from northern Rhodesia with the British soldiers standing over there with rifles. And that used to be very interesting there in context. And then you walk straight down for another 10 minutes. I mean, as you go into that particular place, there will be police there, Zimbabwean police. They may ask you where you're moving. If it's just walking through to Zimbabwe, then you must submit your ID card, and they will allow you to walk for 30 minutes. Then you can come near the stadium where the cricket players usually play international games at Harare. So that is something of a crossover, and that, you know, makes interesting living in Africa. The same way, if you come back again to Lusaka and then go to eastern part of it to Chipata, there is again the Rift Valley. There is a small bridge. You cross Nyanza, Lake Nyanza through that bridge. Okay, it's a narrow strip. You won't believe you get into Malawi. Then you have certain passes in Africa, Zambia, the northern Rhodesia, which is covered by 8 smaller countries, and each of the countries you can just travel across. But when you go to Botswana and Angola, you have to always carry your passport. So imagine, these are all the people who have been contributing a certain bit of their writing to this township girls. Okay, so all the writing is in first person narrative. There is that I there. Why? Because it is their personal experience. Even their quotations they take in, they refer it in court, right? You can read through stories of fond childhood memories. That's very interesting. Coming of age discoveries, they become to take up to adolescence, puberty, changes in their lifestyle with the societal scenario. Some have been diasporic, they have moved away from place, migration has been. So then what they have done, they have accepted the change, but they felt the loss of the place that they have been living. Some of them would have left their tribal communities to educate themselves in English school. Okay, and that some of the authors would not have liked, but those days in African colonies, in African countries, most of them, they favored these British people. They fell flat for them. They were not antagonizing the British authority because of the color of the skin. They felt so happy to have someone so fair and what do we say? I do not know what that concept is. The domination they accepted relentlessly. And, you know, even the chieftains and the chiefs of the tribes would take them into their kingdom and dominion just because that they were white and accepted whatever they asked them to do, and they did that. So that is also explicitly revealed in these short stories. And some of the women have accepted, some did not accept. They did not accept because they felt the parents found they were the pioneers to put forward English into their system of language, and also they were trying to feel that they would be given a good placement in society by the Britishers, by the foreigners who have come. Okay, so then we have this kind of interactive understanding through the book. Okay, and further, some of the authors have done very good tributes to parents. That's very heartwarming. It's touching. Like they have the foresight of the parent considered, expressed in a way to appreciate their perseverance. The parents perceived their notion on the child to educate, and the sacrifice the parents have done. Even now, my dear friends, parents in Zambia are not highly educated. Maybe if I would talk, the third generation is educating themselves. The second generation has been like business people trying to gather wealth transitionally by here, there, or transfer of money through different sources and pooling it for the best of the family, for the good of the family. But the first generation people are very simple. They are farmers, they're farm people. They have homesteads and they live alone there. And so then the writers, they have blossomed now in the township, show reverence to that particular decades of, what do we say, authority of the parents being enforced, though the parents were not that knowledgeable, to these children an opportunity. So then every narration is an experience that you should understand. From pages 1 to 290, everything is of a narration. It is the wisdom as said by the writer. That is something interesting. What I would talk to you is again a bit of the wisdom that I'm taking over from this township girls. as a woman, as a professional, I enjoyed reading that. That made me happy. I'm still love to live there in Zam. I love to live and work there in Zambia, though we keep crossing over because our organization, we work for 10 provinces online. And so certain times I travel across very intensively to meet people, to meet students, to discuss, clarify doubts, and sometimes to Tanzania, or sometimes down slot to even South Africa, where we have other organizations where we work upon, to Malawi. We do cross-cultural interactive class sessions for these people. So the semblance of the old age tradition brought into focus of modernity is very fine and well explicitly expressed in this township girls. Okay, and naturally, Africans to a larger extent believed in oral tradition. We all know what oral tradition is: passing of information from one person to another. Our grandma would have told stories similar. It passes on like that. Where may slight changes would have been there. So otherwise, this storytelling as an oral tradition was an important concept of the expression for these authors of this township girls. Precisely, some of them have been narrating certain stories in terms of independence of women as foretold by their grandma. Okay, the choice of the career through the parent, and also they also had a lot of thought process on money terms. And you know something very nice, they have a lot of worth of money. This Rhodesia, inclusive of Malawi and Mozambique, my dear friends, it's not only British there. Even before the British came, there was a lot of Portuguese influence. Okay, if you go to Zimbabwe and Mozambique, Mozambique even now speaks Portuguese. They will not speak English. All the teaching is in Portuguese. And if they come to our conferences or seminars, they want a translator. They will ask us to translate. Okay, and so that is something very important we should know. Excuse me just a minute, I have a jerk in my throat. Sorry. I'm sorry, been in the session for some time. My throat, I'm sorry about it. Please bear. And you know, this is a colonial influence. We still have colonial influence, you know. And when it comes to Zimbabwe, there's a lot of English, and it is also mystical and a mythological interpretation to be thought about. We should understand that Zimbabwe, though a part of Africa, they all felt that it was completely soulfully taken over by the British, and they were born and brought up there, it looked like, and the black were brought in to be with them. There's a mythological interpretation in particularly in this township girls, there's a reference to this. So then stories from Africa's past relates in relevance to the contemporary presence is all that it is important. And also it reflects on the day-to-day happenings, public life, individual life, how it is affected. Certain times it talks about the dreams and ambitions and the kind of the imagination a child has had and that he has achieved. Okay, and how the innocence is lost is also level, because there was a crucial entity of the colonial period. Some of the black girls were taken over by the men and were harassed, and they made to stay with them and all that. So then they use the word how it is an innocence lost or deflowered, it means to say, and that particular concept is very common in many writers of Africa. Even in Zambia, that word is very, very explicit. Okay, so then in spite of that, in this among these authors there is political consciousness. Okay, challenges they faced in navigating to the post-colonial period, where the black regime came in against the what do we call as the English, the white rule, where they were forced to be as what do we say, subordinates to. I will not use the word slave, no more we have slaves, and that axis was very prevalent in the British time, but still. Okay, so deeply personal reminiscence is all the thought that we have about this. So there is a manifold and varied interpretation of African culture, mixture of tribal values being brought in this particular book. Okay, and it is a product of diverse population. Many differential tribes are there. For example, in Zimbabwe, the very prime tribe was Shona. The Shonas were no more there later on because they tried to develop everything of what the Western folklore had, the concept of Western culture had. They put it into their tradition. Okay, even the clothing they had changed, but still the whole of Africa have got a traditional dress form. Every country has got a kind of a language symbolic to their speechcraft, as well as the dress costume and the food. Every part of Africa will have a differential food that you will be very happy if you would read through this book. There are certain concepts which will talk about different cuisine, dress sense. Okay, so then what it is like, you know, whatever it is, this Rhodesia, or if you take Zimbabwe separately or Zambia separately and Malawi separately or Mozambique separately, each of them was a strip of a land. Okay, what the Europeans, the British want was a piece of empty virginal land, a tract of land. Okay, and they felt they were colonizing because it was sparsely populated and there were only primitives living, and that they are coming in there and to create a kind of a civilization. This is also referred in the book. Okay, so historical developments of the Rhodesian land and what is the history behind each of these culture is very clearly brought in over there. Okay, it's a recurrent theme in Rhodesian understandings of history. Okay, that the African population were subjugated, and sometimes it looks like this population has been recently immigrating to differential places, and there is no history at all. It is highly diasporic and from different places that they have been writing. And what it felt was these primitive people were fighting among themselves, which was meaningless, and these disputes cannot be solved unless and until the British came in and brought in the new language of English with refinement to language. Okay, and you need to know there is this in Rhodesia, you have the dominance of the Bushmen through Shona tribe, and then we have the warlike Dikes, Dibiles. These were there, and they were the invaders with the Zulu tribes, and though they had their own communities and life which was dismantled, and what it was like, in spite of the people living there, there was a rich resource of wealth which was untapped and unexploited until and unless the Britishers came in. So this book tells you about all the rich resources there, gold resources. In Zimbabwe is famous for gold. Zambia is famous for copper and emeralds and amethyst. Very clear. You can go to the mine and see and go and buy. It's so very, very casual it is. And it is so very surprising for an Indian because we've never had such exposure. Okay. And then the Rhodesia got to split, and each of them until Wilbur Smith, like Iron Smith's rule. In the novel, as reflected by Wilbur Smith, The Sunbird in 1972, he talks about the coming in of the Britishers there, and he says it is a kind of the mythology that the Britishers were existing in Zimbabwe even before Africans came. And you know, my dear friends, the climate is of the British type. There is British climate in Rhodesia. Now it is extreme cold weather condition. Summer is in November, October and November. December starts to rain, and it rains until April. Then we have a bit of snowfall, snow sleet coming in, hailstones, and then comes winter for 5 months. Very harsh winter. It goes up to temperatures of 5 degrees too sometimes. And we need to have certain special
Sumathi,
understanding.
Just
yeah, it's time up for me. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's lovely listening, but yes.
Yeah. And maybe I conclude in with a bit of a poetic verse from that particular thing. In fact, I had certain traditions to talk about, just like a harvest festival we have. They too have a harvest festival to celebrate, and they have chieftain coming in. And maybe with the technical terms to talk about, maybe I continue next time with the same concept if I am given an opportunity to talk to. So then it comes to the African pride. I would say the Township Girls reflects on, I am what I am, a product of fusions, a tapestry of language, culture, and continents. Different, but all of them defining a divergence of beliefs, united by one cause and with the one goal. That is what that Township Girls are, to be the best that one can be. Thank you so much for the opportunity given, everybody. And it was a pleasure talking to you. And I still have lots to discuss in terms of being in Africa. And I love being there for the cause of education that we are working in to lift up the society. They are not that highly qualified as us, I should say. We are proud Indians with high knowledge caliber. They are still so very juvenile about it. So then, my dear friends, thank you for the opportunity given. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Preethi Sreenivasan to be the mentor and the mediator there, and Rufus for being the founder of Readers Rendezvous, and all the elites and the beautiful people, and my very best friend and my brother, Dr. Subbu, who put me in line to be part of you all. Thank you so much. Welcome. And
Madam, that was amazing, madam, amazing. And you really, we traveled with you. We traveled to where you are, to put it more precisely. And well, in our own ways, each of us is a product of a crossover. And it was nice to see you foreground that theme of the crossover, and witnessing that in a land, in a continent so far away from our subcontinent. Thank you so much, madam. I leave the floor open to questions, and I'm sure you'll get a lot.
Yes, yes.
Maybe time paucity. I take a few, ma'am, as you will select and give me. I'll come back again. We will have a we have a roller coaster. We meet again often, and I can be, in terms of research, this Township Girls also can be a very good thesis paper.
Okay, I have a question. I have
a lot of writings for that.
Yes, Aparna, come. Is that Aparna?
Yes, yeah. Of course.
Someone has a question? Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, I'm Jack.
Yeah, I have like a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask them all together. And if there is time, you can answer them, or we can take it up later. Okay. My first question is that Zimbabwe has something called the ZIG. And it is a representation. I mean, it is like our, not of the same period, but like our Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and all that. It is a historical monument, and it is evidence of civilization in the past, which goes against our so-called image of Africans not having a civilization, of not having a culture. Okay, so is there in Zimbabwe, like in India today, a lot of people are trying to bring back or revisit or rethink certain incidents in history from an Indian point of view? And so is there something like that happening? Are people in Zimbabwe trying to go back and like Rufus sir had quoted Chinua Achebe, as long as the oh, I forget the exact words, but about the lion and the hunter, and the lion has to roar. So are any of the Zimbabweans trying to roar to tell their own stories?
Yeah, of course.
1 minute. I'll tell you all my questions. That is one of my questions. And
excuse me, my friend. You should be reflexive of what you speak. You cannot dump too many questions, right? It will be not that.
No, I'm just trying to do that. I'm trying to do that in respect of time. That's all. I mean,
okay.
Because of time. Otherwise, I would have taken it one by one.
Okay.
Okay,
Sure,
okay, the other question that I wanted to ask, actually, I have a lot more questions, but I'm restricting myself only to two. The other question I want to ask is from Adiche in Nigeria and Ovanur in Kenya, they also write about their own experiences, and they're pretty post-colonial in their writings. So how do the writers of Township Girls, how would they like compare with these writers?
Shall I tell you one thing? All writings of Africa are post-colonial. Okay.
No, yeah, I understand.
Taken in challenges. Even lately, there is a Zambian writer, 39 years old. Now she should be 41. 2 years back, she was awarded Booker's Prize. And you know, her book, okay, Namvela Serpal, that talks about post-colonial hardships, but she brings in mythology and science fiction over there also in the chapters. Okay, my dear friend. And like from Maya Angelou, if you will take all the Black American, everybody has been. Caged Bird, what does it talk about? It talks about post-colonialism. And you know, the pre-colonial period was full of suffering for them.
No, that's no. That's, I mean, what I was trying to say, see that like Adichie and Ovanur, they are very clear that their experience of colonization is very different. They do not believe in Pan-Africanism, and they say my experience is very different from your experience. And in that sense, I'm asking.
Shall I tell you, Africa is made up of 54 countries. They are not states.
No, I know that. And
so
because I know that, I'm asking.
Each country will have a separate identity and uniqueness of their culture and tradition, my dear friend.
No, that I know. I know that. Yes. That's why I'm asking.
So what is your question?
How do these writings like compare with those type of writings? And is there both? I don't know about Zambia. I mean, Zimbabwe.
Why don't you type the question? There's another question from Shruti. Okay, I will answer Shruti's. Meanwhile, you type your question, my dear friend. I will be able to answer you better.
I think I'll email you.
Okay. So one mostly looks up to the East and consider them an ideal for civilization. What are your thoughts on this, ma'am? You are talking about the Oriental culture, right? And in the East, in the Southeast part of it, we are also a very huge subcontinent, of course. Each country has got their precise predictions to living forms, living standards, I should say. If you would go to, to the east of the China and the Japan and the Korea, they have a very strong, vibrant culture. If you would read their stories, if you will see the way they behave, specifically Koreans, you will really be wondering, there is some bit of Indianized sentiments over there. Koreans love Indians. They call us as Hindu. Okay. So then there is a thought of old-time tradition in terms of spirituality and divinity focused entities of the East. But that doesn't mean the central part of the world, Africa, doesn't have. It has, my dear friend. It has got a very profound tradition and culture, backdrop. And you know, the best part is, do not mistake me, every youngster revere their father and the mother like gods. In front of the parent, they will keep their hands folded, which we in our families do. You know why? That's why the Banda tribe, they say, are the Dravidians of Tamil Nadu. Some of the people, the dark-colored villagers, we say them, we call them rustics sometimes. Not that we are not rustic, we too have rustic entities within us, but the skin tan falls in to say the Bandas and the Dravidian, the very first original Tamilians are the same. Banda people will have certain word structure like Amai, they will call their daughter Amai. When I went there and everybody started to call Amai, Amai, and I was very much taken up and I was shocked because it is some way down that ethnic clan link is there. And African culture is very, very interesting. And, you know, for weddings, for field work, for farming, farm harvesting, especially marriages, then living in form and respecting husband. Because, you know, there the boys pay a huge dowry for the girl. So they are forced to earn a lot of money, save a lot of money. And for every tribe, the wealth is in the cattle. So the very first generation, imagine, they had a big, large cattle. They used cattle to sell to make money to educate their children. Even now it is. It is so. So then it is like, you know, the East has got its own civilization. The mid-African civilization is also something very different, and each tribe has got a uniqueness. We spend time with them, and maybe that is not possible for everybody. Even through the books we have not read through. Maybe precisely we have to formulate, all of us join together and do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumathi ma'am. Lot of questions, probably some other occasion.
Yeah, sure.
And we move on to our next speaker, who's got a very gripping title, The Memory Police. Please welcome Professor Premjith Mathew, who is a senior professor at the Hindu College, Pattabhiram. Welcome, sir. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is reaching everyone. I hope I'm audible. I would like to thank at the outset Dr. Rufus for giving me a chance to talk about this book. I also am so happy that MPS ma'am, Preethi Sreenivasan ma'am, is moderating this session. I also say hi to my co-panelists, Sumathi ma'am, Ramakrishnan sir, and Fathima Banu ma'am. I'm so happy that I am in the company of great people like you. So today the book which I have, which I've chosen for review is, you can see the book cover behind me. The book title is not totally visible. It's like memory, you know, things are not visible sometimes. Certain things are hidden. So even the book cover, you can see the picture, the face of the person, the book cover, the face of the lady there. It's not properly etched out, because you can see that some parts are kind of, you know, redrawn. So that's a kind of something that's very interesting. So this is a very book which I thought maybe it's a book which is good for people who are interested in memory studies. I am like a small boy standing in the shore of memory studies, trying to pick a pebble or two and get some information about this book, because this book has touched me so deeply that it is kind of, you know, even the way I picked up this book in a star mark in Chennai, it was something which is very, you know, quite interesting. So I'm not going deep into it because time is a big factor. So I'm just turning on my timer here. I don't know, you can see the timer. Yeah. So the timer is on, and I'll stop exactly after 15 minutes. So I've divided my book review into some 8 sections. In the first section, I'll talk about the book itself. The book, the name is Memory Police. Okay, I'll try to finish certain points now itself because I don't want to go into it later. Memory Police, you can even sometimes they refer to as MP. And MP is one word which you can see in most of the movies related to apocalypse. You know, MP also stands for military police. So MP has got different interpretations. So, but here MP stands for memory police. And the author's name is Yoko Ogawa, and she's a very petite person, very like short, like most of the Japanese people, and she lives in Tokyo. And this book was published in Japanese language in the year 1994, and it was just last year the book came out in English translation. The translator's name is Stephen Snyder, and Stephen Snyder and Yoko Ogawa, they just met one time in a sushi restaurant in Kyoto, just one time, and that is the only time they met, and they have developed a kind of bonding, you know, even though the cultures are different, the language is different. What was common between them was the book, you know? So it's very interesting to see the bonding between the translator and the author. So that is one thing. And but this book has got 274 pages. So I don't know whether I can, the book is there. I don't know whether you can see it because sometimes technology is not that good. But anyway, so let us start by looking at the synopsis of the story. The story is about this unnamed island where things disappear and the inhabitants of the island lose their memories about the objects, which can be a bird, roses, maps, or even calendars. So you just imagine an island where it's like a fable where things disappear. More like James Thurber's The Last Clock, something fantastic kind of story. The inhabitants voluntarily participate in this memory forgetting experience. What they do is, suppose it is an object like rose, what they do, they uproot the rose plants, and sometimes if it's a book, they will burn the books, and even they will burn the calendar. So they just very meekly, without any sense of any protest, they just kind of, they kind of subserviently, they just kind of, do things based on. So, but the thing is that not all of them are able to forget. Some of them still remember what's a rose, what's a book, and all these things are very, very symbolic. Because all the chosen things which are very symbolic, like a rose, a rose has got different connotations. Even a book, and book is sometimes compared to a bird, because you can see the bird when it is flapping its wings, like in the skies. You remember the old childhood paintings we used to draw where birds will be flying in the sky. So that kind of bird, it also reminds books. So birds, like books, can help us to fly. The birds, books, they're kind of related. So books are like, gives wings to us, like the Red Bull maybe, right? That's one thing. And so some of them are not able to forget. They are not able to forget. So they are the unique ones, like not all of them are able to forget. Only some of them are able to forget. And those who can't forget, they are hunted down by the memory police. The memory police is after people who still remembers things. So that is actually a sin to remember. Remembering is becoming a sin. So police comes after them. So they have two objectives in mind. First, to remove all the objects related to, for example, rose, maybe pictures of rose, photographs of rose, even maybe embroidery on rose. All these things they have to remove. That's first duty of memory police. The second duty is to take away these people who still can remember. So they are kind of enemies of the state. They have to remove them so that then only they have this, their objective is fulfilled. So this cycle is repeated for each, memory, whatever thing is disappearing from the island. So each disappearance will lead to the same, what do you call, the cycle of activity of memory police. Now the characters, we have an unnamed narrator. She's a novelist. So you can see that most of the characters in this novel, they are all creative people. So again, the author is trying to tell us that the creative peoples are the one, creative people are the ones who actually are kind of disappearing from this society. So here you can see that her mother, she lost her mother and her father both, and her mother was caught by the memory police. Mother, as I told you before, mother was not able to forget things. She had the sin, or she had that curse that she had to remember certain things. So she had to remember things. And this novelist, the unnamed novelist, is working on a novel. And in that we have a story within a story. The story of the novel, what is there in the novel. The story is about a typist and a teacher. And the typist is again voiceless. So again, a lot of symbolic meanings are added to this text. And the ending of that story is a nightmare. So I'm not going deep into that. I think definitely you should all read the book if you get a chance to read it. So the novelist has one more friend, and thing is that this novelist is working with an editor. The editor is given a name. The name is not a name; it's just letter R. So the letter R is actually referring to the editor of this novelist's book. And this person is also a person who, like a mother, can't forget things. So he's also unique. So what happens is that this person is given a kind of safe house inside her own home, and so she's hiding inside. So you can imagine about many hidings that people have, like hiding from all these things, you know. So R is another character, the editor. And finally, we have one old man, a trusted friend of the unnamed narrator or the novelist. So these are the characters we have. Very few characters we have, but they are all very powerful characters, because each one, it's not about the number of characters. In some movies, you can see there are hundreds and hundreds of characters, but it can't make any sense. But when you have few characters, you know, it becomes very powerful. So next I'll move on to the main ideas and themes, which I was able to kind of, you know, read about this book. Most of the ideas are from the references which I have read in the past 2-3 days. But I've also added my personal interpretation that will come at the end. So one of the main idea is how Yoko Ogawa was attracted to the diaries of Anne Frank. You know, right from a childhood, she used to kind of worship Anne Frank, and even I feel a little bit related to this because I remember doing a theater presentation in MCC long back, which was based on the diaries of Anne Frank. It's known as Man in Awakening. It is not a kind of, you know, a kind of runaway success or something like that, but it was a play which gave us satisfaction. You know, we all were happy about the play. So one thing is that the kind of connection, the kind of relationship, literal relationship Yoko had with Anne Frank. And very interestingly, when she was writing this book, she used to hide inside the drawer or under the table with a notebook in the hand to feel the exact, you know, like I think Fathima Banu would have read about Benyamin. Benyamin also had the same experience. To get the feeling of Najib, he had to travel through the desert and experience the trauma felt by the character. So the same way, Yoko also had the same experience. She actually had spent time in the dark space under the table, and where she was able to kind of experience what she felt in confinement. So that's something great. I really appreciate Yoko for that. So Yoko is a very interesting writer because she's a very felt writer, I should say, because she's writings are very like it's like written in your, it's like written in blood, like something like K.R. Mira's style of writing. If you read her Hangwoman or even this the other one, the Gospel of Judas, if you read those books, you understand that these books are felt writing. Really you feel the pain of the character coming through the author. So that is the thing. And so that was one experiment she did. And not only that, the editor is, you can see the editor is actually confined in a place inside the, inside a home. It's like a special trap door like a situation. And even I was reminded of the movie Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit is a movie which came out recently. It talks about this Nazi child soldiers, and how people were, discovered in some of the houses, basements, and attic and all that. So same way here, the R is made. So R's the hideaway, or he's hiding inside this unnamed narrator's house, is again reminding us of the life of Anne Frank. So and she appreciates Anne Frank because she says that Anne Frank was able to write even though she was in confinement, she was able to write, and she came out with that lovely book. Even though she couldn't survive, her book told the tale. That's something interesting. The second point which I would like to discuss is the contemporary theme of this novel. Even the novel was released in the year 1994. There are a lot of parallels I could see. The one book which I came across, I have not read that book. Actually, two books which I have come across. Sorry, there are three books actually. Sorry, three books which I came across, which has got a lot of parallel with this: the act of disappearance. How people disappear from this earth. Like there's a book by a Singapore-based writer, Jing Lee. I hope the pronunciation is correct. The title of the book is How We Disappeared. So, and there's a book by Meena Kandasamy. The title of the book is The Gypsy Goddess, which actually is about a massacre that happened in Kilvanmani village on a Christmas day in the year 1968. And we have a book by this Middle East-based author, Deepak Unnikrishnan, The Temporary People. So, see, a lot of things, people disappear, like instead of going to the political implication of this disappearance, which also is very interesting to talk about. I don't have time, still have only 3 minutes left. So, it's very difficult to, kind of talk about disappearance. Even I feel that, like when I'm working in a college, like any college for that matter, this kind of people, teachers disappearing, like the kind of, the permanent temporary kind of thing we have in all the colleges, permanent staff members and temporary staff members. So this temporary staff members, even those who are qualified, sometimes they disappear, like I felt like two of my one of colleagues, they just disappeared after this lockdown time. I mean, not only here, many places it happened, like I could get a lot of people asking for jobs and all that, so people disappearing, or even like in the housekeeping department in a campus or an organization or in a shopping mall, all these people are like, they disappear, we don't know from where they come. And even these people who come and build big houses in Chennai, these big flats and apartments, they just come and they just go, and we don't know what happens to them. So I think that's where memory plays a part. We should not forget. We should always remember these people. So this is the second point, which actually I'm trying to. And the third point is the writerly dedication of. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I'll just try to try to finish it as soon as possible, because I don't want to bore you people with my passionate talk about memory and memory police. So the dedication of a writer. Okay, thank you, ma'am. So dedication of a writer, because Yoko Ogawa is such a beautiful writer, because she got married, and before that she was working in a company. After her marriage, she stopped working, and she thought of having writing as a career. Even after the marriage, she thought that she will write. She will not stop writing. Something great. Like to appreciate. I mean, it's very difficult to do things which we want to do, which we want to do. It's very important. We are always ready to do things others want us to do, but what we want to do in life is very, very important. So here you have a person who, after the birth of her baby, the son was born, and she's written there in one of the articles which I read, she would change a diaper and then she will write a sentence. That's interesting. She will change the diaper and then she will write a sentence. This is actually very interesting, And then she also will make a meal and then she will write a sentence. So you can see that she is kind of, a writer who's dedicated to her profession. So that's something which I really like. And she's got a very interesting writing style, because if you read this is a translation, we can't read the Japanese. So you can see that she just leaves the characters, free. She doesn't kind of impose on them or kind of, control them. I mean, they are under her control, but she doesn't kind of, what do you say, kind of make her presence felt. Her ego doesn't interfere with the ego of the characters. It's totally different. So she talks about the act of she being a distant observer. She's just distant observer. She doesn't get inside the characters. And the fourth point, which I want to talk about, is the concept of material memory. Like material memory is something very interesting, because I remember, this book by Anjal Malhotra. It's called Remnants of Partition. In that book, she talks about the kind of 21 objects which people had left behind when they left, what do you call? I'm sorry, just turning off my timer. Yeah. So during partition, people had left many things, and they brought certain things from across the border. So the book Remnants of Partition by Anjal Malhotra is a book which talks about this object-based material memory. So everyday objects. Even in this book, you can see a lot of objects are the character is able to remember everything, and narrator and old man, they are not able to remember anything. So you can see that harmonica, sweets, music box, all these things are something which is very very strange to this old man and this unnamed narrator. But for R, it has got meaning. So you can see that it's very interesting, because and a lot of memories associated with each and every object. So like maybe a small piece of pencil, maybe, or something, something. Even in our own life, we see objects which we use every day, and a pen, maybe, like all these things have got. So something, an example of associative memory, like everything is associated, and when you look at an object, it creates kind of memory. So that is regarding the fifth point, which I would like to talk about is there a fifth point? Let me see, 1 minute. The fifth point is hope. Hope, because even in midst of all this memory and disappearance and all that thing. This old man and R and the unnamed narrator, they have a bonding. They still they suffer everything in silence. Like they know that they can't fight this memory police, so they just suffer in silence, and that is actually something great. Because somewhere it is mentioned, hope is a silent revolution of the oppressed. The people who are oppressed, for them, the only revolution is silence. Silence. So the silence also can become a revolution. You don't have to open your mouth and say something. And a lot of creative people, I told you, a lot of creative people, because her mother was an artist. She is a novelist. She's writing about a musician. So everywhere you can see artists they're creative people are shown or described in this novel. And even here in India, we can see many creative people, like there is a Badal Nanjundaswamy, I think I am pronouncing his name correctly, who had the moonwalking kind of thing. We really thought that was like he was walking on the moon, but he was actually walking on one of the roads in Bangalore, and where you can see an auto passing after some time. So he was dressed up in like an astronaut and he was walking. So it's a kind of, the artistic creation and how the artist actually silently protests. He's not talking there, he's just walking. And the whole thing became viral. I hope you people remember that short video which was shared like I think few months back. So that's one thing. And even cartoonists who are kind of, always being hunted. So this is a different way. So this is actually something very interesting. In spite of all these things, people, even all this, like Anne Frank, even though she had a life living inside a very confined place, she was able to write something. Okay, so with that we finished the main ideas which I was able to get from this book. And then we go for the personal interpretation, the kind of interpretation which I think is what I found from this book, my own way of looking at this novel. Again, there are actually 5 points which I would like. This first point is actually the fear of losing our memory. That's something very, very, because my grandmother recently lost her memory and now she can't even recognize me. I used to spend a lot of time in my childhood with her, and now whenever we go home, whenever we go visit her during vacation, she doesn't even recognize me. So it's something very, very alarming thing to happen to a man or a woman, like losing a memory, which actually is something very bad. So this is because of old age, definitely, but still, losing memory is not something something and the same author has written another book called The Professor and the Housekeeper, which talks about a professor who's got a memory only for 80 minutes. There's another book by the same author, which you can, if you want, you can read that book. It's also a very interesting book on memory. And it's something great. So second thing is the fear of the external forces shaping our lives. Sometimes even without we being aware of things change around us. Like we are not directly involved. For example, in my state, Onam was a very much a cultural festival. But nowadays it has changed its meaning. It has become very like it is not being celebrated. People are celebrating it, but it's like, why should you celebrate something like some kind of questions come up, because it was a cultural festival. Like it doesn't have anything to do with any particular faith or anything like that. But things change, and we don't know how these things change. It just happens around us. So and also the fear of losing one's identity, which also is very dangerous, because you become another face, like memory police. Memory police, they have a very blank face and stone-faced people, and they are kind of zombified, and we also get zombified. Zombified in the sense we don't have any expression on our face. We just become another brick on the wall. The old song by Pink Floyd, you become another brick on the wall. You just be like, you're not unique. That's one thing. And second thing is regarding this the fear of death. That is there in everyone's mind. Like even here, disappearance is actually death. People die, because people disappear. They disappear and they just disappear. We don't know where they go. So death is also like that. We don't know where they go. And finally, the fear of losing books, because in this there's one whole library is burned down, and books are being destroyed. Books which gave us a sight or kind of insight into different worlds. Like, so we are made to read only one world, which is that's the only world we are supposed to know. So that kind of thing, and I feel that literature too will be disappearing in the days to come. Because around the world, not just in one place, everywhere it is happening. So it has already happened in many places, and I'm sure that you are aware of all these incidents. And coming back to the last part, kind of, the kind of negatives of the book. What I found about this book is nothing is detailed or given. Details are not given about the memory police. No memory police. What do they do and what do they, what kind of, who is their leader? Why should they do all these things, or how did they come to power, or to whom do they report to? All these things are kind of missing in this book. So I think that part is a bit shady. I think maybe it's authors, she had some idea behind doing that, that keeping memory police in a kind of, mysterious kind of police. And second thing is actually, the book actually needs to be a little bit more, because we still don't know, we can't judge this book because this book is a translated book. So since we have not read the Japanese version, I can't talk about that point, but still, I think that's one thing which is very negative, that is memory police, the details are not properly, etched out. That's one thing. And the positive thing is, I think it's more about the style of writing, which actually came through Stephen Snyder, the translator, but still it's a very beautiful translation. That's what many people have told, and even I felt it when I read the book. And it's a different subject, and a different way of looking at memory, and a fable for memory is always interesting, Maybe there are other books which you people can tell me. I can also take down some names and make myself, familiar with those books. And the Japanese culture, something very interesting, because I have been reading the novels of Kigo Higashino, the mystery, the crime writer, Malice. He's the author of Malice, The Unusual Devotion of Suspect X, all those books. So all these books actually gives us a kind of, the beautiful Japanese landscape, which actually is very interesting. I think, and here the reader's role is very important, because the reader is actively engaged in the book, and to empathize with the character, and you have to really be with the characters to know what is to be without memory. So I think this is what I felt about the book. I hope I was able to kind of present something related to the book. I'm thankful again to all of you for listening to me, and thanks to Preethi ma'am, Rufus sir, even Ramakrishnan sir, Fathima ma'am, and even Sumathi ma'am. Thank you. So I think if there are any questions related to this book, I'll be able to answer. I'll try to answer. I'm not an expert in memory studies. I'm just starting my journey. So I think, ma'am, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Premjith sir. What for you was the tip of the iceberg was a gamut for us through the spectrum of, for us it seemed like going through the spectrum of memory studies. So thank you for that brilliant presentation. Actually, the one question was in advance of your presentation itself, so I'll bring it to you. It's from Dr. Felix Moses, retired professor and head Department of English, Madras Christian College. He has sent the questions. I read the question to you. The Memory Police and published in the year 1994 and translated only in 2019. How has this time interval impacted the understanding of this postmodern novel?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Thank you, sir. I think I was your student. So I did my MPhil in MCC. So thank you, sir. Right. I'm not a person who is deeply involved in memory studies in terms of theories. I'm more into the beginning stage, but still, I think one of the main ways we can connect this book to the postmodern theories in terms of the kind of structure, the kind of structure it has got, because memory studies itself is an interdisciplinary subject. It has got a lot of connections to other subjects like anthropology and sociology and all that. So in that way, the interdisciplinary approach is one thing. Second thing is, I think in terms of the play within the play kind of element which we have in this book, that's kind of question, that's the kind of answer I have. Again, I'm not an expert, so this is what I could, if somebody else can, kind of chip in and talk about, that will be very helpful. Thank you, sir.
While another question can come in, I'll pose mine, might be stating the obvious, but is it an allegory of the totalitarian state?
Yeah, ma'am, that's your question, ma'am. You asking this question?
My question.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, that's true, ma'am. Because this book, most of the time, the book has been described as Orwellian in nature. So there is a kind of connection that a lot of references to the Orwellian tale, you know. So definitely it can be. But more than the very interesting thing is that it is not about the totalitarian state. It is how the people are kind of living in this totalitarian state. You know, the memory police, even though they are there, their actions are just, you know, it's happening. You know, but the people who are these three characters, R and the old man and this unnamed narrator, the way they are, you know, finding their own meaning in all this chaos. You know, that's something very interesting. So totalitarian state, the influence is there. It's all there, but it's more about, you know, people surviving. So it's more like a survival tale. That also is one interpretation we can give. But definitely, it's an Orwellian. It's got some kind of connection to that point which you asked, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. It brought to mind Brave New World also. No, this indoctrination. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and of course Orwellian, as you said, Animal Farm. Yeah. Any questions, friends?
I think there's one question which came up. Can the memory police be related to monster narratives? Yeah, I'm not that familiar with monster narratives. Maybe, yeah, maybe because it's got something very grotesque or something, you know, gruesome happening. So definitely, I think it's possible. It can be, but we don't have any much descriptions for the memory police. They are just, you know, black dressed, you know, wearing black dress and with a stone face. So yeah, and their presence is not that kind of, you know, very threatening here. They are there, but the absence, the disappearance of things are much more, you know, interesting than the. That's what I felt. I don't know. Maybe after you read the book, maybe you'll be able to relate to it. This is what I know. That's what I'm sharing with you. Thank you. I think Shruti, yes. Thank you, Shruti.
There's a question, sir.
Yes.
About hyperreality.
Yes. So hyperreality. I'm sorry, sir. I don't think I can answer this question because I don't know anything about this concept. Right. So hyperreality, maybe he's talking about, you know, magnified reality or something. I'm not sure about that. But definitely, I'll be reading about this. I'll definitely read about this, and maybe I'll be in touch with you to let us take discussion beyond this, you know, this platform and try to have a discussion. I'm so happy that you're asking these questions because this is another way of looking at the novel because, you know, like literary readings of this book. You know, I don't know whether this book is prescribed in universities for literature department and all that, but definitely I think hyperreality and even the earlier question about postmodern elements in this novel, I think both are worth looking into, and definitely I will be in touch, or we will be in touch. I'll kind of try to find answers and we'll be in touch with you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
If there aren't any more questions, to wrap up this lovely session of book with a few comments and thanking our participants for the day, Dr. Ramakrishnan, Dr. Sumathi, Premjith, Dr. Fathima. It was such a listen to all of you, and maybe for takeaway was about voicelessness, voice. Okay, maybe I have an obsession with that. You know, how the memory police, it's the dominant narrative, okay, and suppression of voices. But if memory itself to be meddled with or erased, it's an alarming situation. So, and that's happening in the world. Thank you, madam, for Madam, for that insight on human trafficking. The story was ultimately told. Even in Ramakrishnan sir's presentation, we see the importance of silence and stories coming out. Thank you, Sumathi Madam, for highlighting the crossover, and it was a delightful presentation. So on the whole, we had a very intellectually stimulating evening with these 4 presentations, and I want to thank the speakers and all the participants who gave your questions. Lovely evening. Hope to see you in the next Books and Coffee.
Thank you.
Bye
you,
for now.
Bye.